You're lying in bed. The lights are off. The room is quiet. And then it starts. That one conversation from earlier just shows up. Something you said, something they said, the way they looked at you for half a second too long. Now you're replaying it. Again, and again, and again. You tweak your words in your head. You imagine better responses. You notice tiny details you completely missed in the moment. And suddenly, something that felt normal earlier, now feels off. Almost wrong. You weren't even thinking about it before. So why does it feel so important now? Why can't your brain just let it go? And here's the strange part. You already know it doesn't help. You know replaying the conversation won't change anything. But you still do it. So the real question isn't why it happens. It's why your brain refuses to stop. Let's zoom in on what's actually happening in that moment. Because when you replay a conversation, it doesn't feel like overthinking. It feels like problem solving. Like your brain is trying to figure something out. Maybe you said something slightly awkward. Maybe you didn't respond the way you wish you had. Or maybe nothing obvious went wrong at all. And that's what makes it worse. Because now your brain is scanning for something that might be wrong. And this is where it gets interesting. Your brain isn't replaying the conversation to torture you. It's doing it to protect you. But not in the way you think. Human brains are wired for social survival. Long before phones, jobs, or modern life, your survival depended on one thing: belonging. If you were accepted by the group, you were safe. If you were rejected, you were alone. And alone didn't just feel bad. It was dangerous. So your brain evolved to become extremely sensitive to social signals. Tiny shifts in tone, facial expressions, pauses in conversation. Things most people wouldn't even consciously notice. Your brain notices. And remembers. And replays. Because it's trying to answer one question. Did something go wrong? Think about it. Why do you replay conversations more with certain people? People you care about, people whose opinion matters, people you don't fully understand yet. You rarely replay a conversation with someone you don't care about. Because there's no risk there. No emotional stakes. But when there is, your brain turns into a detective. Reconstructing every moment. Looking for clues. And this is where the loop begins. Because the more you analyze, the more possibilities you create. What if they thought I was weird? What if that joke didn't land? What if I sounded awkward? Now your brain has something new to investigate. So it replays the conversation again. This time focusing on a different detail. And each replay feels slightly more intense than the last. Because now you're not just remembering. You're interpreting. And interpretation is where anxiety lives. But here's what most people completely miss. The replay itself is not the problem. It's what your brain is trying to resolve that keeps it going. Your brain hates uncertainty. More than almost anything else. If something feels unfinished, unclear, slightly off, it won't let go. Not because it's broken, but because it's trying to complete the story. Let me show you something subtle. When you replay a conversation, notice what you're actually searching for. You're not just remembering what happened. You're trying to figure out, what do they think about me now? That's the real question underneath everything. And here's the problem. You don't have access to that answer. So your brain does the next best thing. It guesses. Over and over again. And this is where it becomes exhausting. Because every guess creates a new version of reality. In one version, everything was fine. In another, you embarrassed yourself. In another, they secretly judged you. Now your brain has multiple possible outcomes. And no way to confirm which one is real. So it keeps replaying. Trying to find certainty in something that doesn't offer it. If you enjoy understanding how your mind works like this, consider subscribing. I upload a new video every day at 6 p.m. because what we're about to get into goes deeper than most people realize. There's another layer to this. And it's not just about uncertainty. It's about control. When you replay a conversation, you're doing something very specific. You're rewriting it. You imagine saying something better, smarter, more confident. And for a moment, it feels good. Like you fixed something. But then reality kicks back in. Because you know you can't actually go back. So your brain tries again. Another version, another response, another outcome. And just like that, you're stuck in a loop between what happened and what could have happened. But here's the twist. This isn't just about fixing the past. It's about preparing for the future. Your brain is learning. It's storing patterns. Trying to make sure that next time, you won't make the same mistake. So every replay is also a rehearsal. A simulation. A way of saying, next time, do it better. And that sounds useful. Until it isn't. Because there's no clear endpoint. There's no moment where your brain says, okay, we've learned enough. Instead, it keeps refining. Endlessly. Chasing a version of the conversation where everything is perfect. And perfection is a moving target. Now think about this. Have you ever noticed that the more you replay something, the worse it starts to feel? What was neutral becomes awkward. What was slightly awkward becomes embarrassing. What was fine becomes a problem. That's not the memory changing. That's your interpretation intensifying. Because each replay adds emotion. Each replay adds judgment. Each replay pulls you further away from what actually happened. And closer to what you fear happened. So what's really going on here? You're not just remembering. You're negotiating with uncertainty. You're trying to control how you're perceived. Without having access to the other person's mind. And that's a game you can't win. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Not everyone does this the same way. Some people barely replay conversations at all. Others do it constantly. So what's the difference? It often comes down to awareness. People who are highly self-aware, highly observant, emotionally attuned. They pick up on more details during interactions. Which means they also have more material to analyze afterward. More data. More signals. More things to question. So the very thing that makes you socially aware is also the thing that makes you overanalyze. And that can feel frustrating. Because it feels like your strength is turning against you. But it's not. It's just being used in a way that doesn't serve you. Now let's bring this back to you. The next time you catch yourself replaying a conversation, pause for a second and ask yourself, what am I trying to figure out right now? Not the surface thought. The deeper one. Are you trying to understand what they meant? Or are you trying to understand what they think about you? Because those are two very different things. And here's the realization that changes everything. You cannot fully control how someone perceives you. No matter how perfectly you speak. No matter how carefully you respond. People will still interpret you through their own lens. Their own mood. Their own experiences. Their own biases. So the loop your brain is running is based on a false assumption. That if you analyze enough, you can control the outcome. But you can't. And that's not a failure. That's reality. Which brings us to the real reason this keeps happening. It's not because you're bad at conversations. It's not because you said something wrong. It's because your brain is trying to protect your social standing. In a world where certainty doesn't exist. And once you see that, something shifts. Because now, instead of fighting the loop, you understand it. You see what your brain is doing. And more importantly, you see what it can't do. You don't need to solve every conversation after it happens. You don't need to replay every moment until it feels perfect. Because the goal was never perfection. The goal was connection. And connection is messy, imperfect, human. So the next time your brain pulls you back into that loop, you don't have to force it to stop. Just notice it. Recognize the pattern. And gently remind yourself. There's nothing left to solve here. And if this is something you've experienced, I'm curious. What's the one conversation you still catch yourself replaying? You don't have to explain it. Even just thinking about it, you'll understand exactly why your brain keeps going back.